All right, thank you and welcome everyone. I'm calling the March 28th, 2023 Tumwater City Council work session to order. And I believe I have all council members present.
Charlie isn't here.
Okay. Oh, and Charlie's excused. He is excused for this evening. So with that, we will move into our first item, which is Thurston Economic Development Council update. And Austin Ramirez will go ahead and start that off. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Good evening, everyone. Just some context for this item. As you're aware, we typically contract with the Economic Development Council on a 2-year basis for economic development services. So that includes sort of our standard business retention and recruitment activities that we rely heavily on for them. It also includes a very large menu of services for entrepreneurs and existing businesses. They've got a very strong market research arm. They support our redevelopment efforts. There's the makerspace, which you hear about. We lean on them quite heavily, our partners over there. And so we're due to renew that 2-year agreement. So we wanted to create a space for the EDC to provide some updates on some things that we're aware of and also some exciting new regional developments, and also create some space for council to ask any questions or any discussions before we bring this to contract for council approval at a future date. So joining me are Michael Cade, Michelle Pope, and Sean Moore. And before I hand it off to them, I'm really excited about what we're going to talk about today and what's on the horizon for not just our community members, but our region as a whole. So with that, Michael, can I hand it off to you to kick off?
Yeah, thank you very much, Austin. And thank you very much for getting us here this evening. I appreciate your leadership and your participation as an economic developer in our ecosystem. You've been a welcome addition to our community, and I'm just really looking forward to continue our working ways together. And also I want to take a moment to thank John Doan for your leadership in economic development and how we do what we do. Some of the things that we're going to be talking about this evening will be old news to John. He's seen them, but I think there's a little bit of a twist that we would like to be putting on these things as we keep moving forward. And so just hopefully I won't bore John to death, but bear with me, we'll get through it. And then Peter Agabi, certainly a sitting member of our board of directors, absolutely have enjoyed getting to know council member Agabi on economic development and discussions about how we do what we do and why we do what we do. I thought I'm going to keep my comments very short because I'd like to introduce Sean Moore. He's the director of our Center for Business and Innovation, and Michelle Pope is the director of the Makerspace. These are two things that are, when you think about economic development, I'm hoping that you'll leave this evening's conversation with the notion that economic development in Thurston County is done a little bit differently. In fact, this afternoon, I spent the entire day meeting with my counterpart organizations and agencies from around the state up in Tacoma for our annual meeting to talk about best practices. And it's always struck me that people are kind of migrating towards the notion of how we do it in this community. And we were put on the stage several times and on the spot to talk about how we do and why we do what we do. So I want to talk a little bit about that and what it is that separates us from economic development. Again, the traditional economic development is to recruit, retain, and expand. Recruit businesses, retain them once they get here, and then expand market opportunities. I want to do it a little bit differently. And that started about 15 years ago. And really 10 years ago, we got very, very serious about it. We are the lead economic development agency for Thurston County, and we take that moniker very well. And every 2 years, we're re-identified by the Washington State Department of Commerce as that lead organization. And of that organization, we're required and literally required to work with the cities and the communities on their economic community development plans. 10 years ago, though, we decided to have a better understanding of what the economic ecosystem is. And not a lot of people were talking about economic development as an ecosystem. And so we really kind of scratched our heads and started challenging ourselves, and the board challenged us to think in terms of what's missing. Well, we didn't really know what's missing because we didn't know it was here. And so we undertook a mapping exercise. And Austin, I think I have the ability to screen share real quickly. I'm going to just show you a quick screen share. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but this is one of the maps that we created about 10 years ago. And in this map, you'll start to see all the economic development activities that we at that time endeavored, the chambers of commerce, the Rotary clubs, the Kiwanis, the cities, to tell us what is an economic development to you, what activities occur when we think of economic development. And then on the y-axis, we decided to find out who's doing that work. And so when you look at this matrix, you're going to be able to see gaps and redundancies and some other things, but I'm going to really talk about how we set the stage for the work. And the rest of this presentation, you're going to hear from Sean and Michelle. And so if you just bear with me real quickly, I'm going to share the screen with you. And what you're going to see here, and Sean, I'm looking at you. Can you give me a thumbs up that you can see that screen? Okay. So what you're seeing here is an absolute mapping of economic development in Thurston County about 10 years ago. And if you look at it, the dots are the folks and the organizations that do that work. So example, on the left, it starts out with career counseling. That's part of economic development. On the far right, it goes to entrepreneurial and export assistance and self-employment. And so somewhere in between organizations do that work. So on the axis going up and down are the organizations, everything from academia to chambers of commerce to United Way and other nonprofits. And on the top axis are those activities that we all identified as critical. What we found at that time was not a lot of redundancies, but we found is the holes and the gaps. So if we were smart about it, we would play to our strengths and also fill to secure the weaknesses. The Economic Development Council at that time chose to create an environment where an entrepreneurial ecosystem truly could be born and a network of activities that would support entrepreneurs, business startups, and existing businesses. And so that really was how we got to where we are. From that, we created the partnership with South Puget Sound Community College and created at that time, it's known as the Business Resource Center, the Center for Business Innovation. This system that we have today plays to the weaknesses, meaning that we've worked to fill those gaps where there weren't any dots. We work to fill that. And the work that Sean does and Michelle does is that specifically what you hear from Michelle is talking about the notion of how do we create and support the notion of an innovative economy. That's people starting new jobs and new employers and finding out new products and new markets. That doesn't just happen. It does happen organically, but it needs to be supported. And the work that we do certainly supports that. And the work that Sean does is how we do that work in the platforms that we did. At that time, 10 years ago, we had 2 or 3 platforms that were very effective. But we had an idea that it could be much stronger than that. The last 2 years, and if you think about the Economic Development Council, and you think about the work, and I didn't want to give you a bunch of data tonight. We've talked about data in the past and where that comes. But if you think about it in just terms of plain, if we did not exist, the last 2 years, we infused the local economy on an average of about $187 million a year in economic activities. And that means that for every dollar that comes into our organization, we return about $16.52 back to the local economy. And we can track that by the clients that they do and the economic activities that they undertake and the residue that they provide. The last thing I'm going to leave you, and I'm going to turn it over to Sean here in a second, is that the old saying that strong economic development, rising tide, an incoming tide raises all boats. We got to stop saying that. We just have to stop saying it. It doesn't. Boats that have holes in it and boats that aren't solvent go down to the bottom. And so we need, as economic developers, need to create a system and an entrepreneurial network that allows those boats to be solved, be they nonprofits, for-profit businesses, or other organizations. And really, that's the beauty of the work that we do. I'm going to turn over to Sean, and he'll walk you through the Center for Business Innovation and the entrepreneurial platforms that we've created and that you have access to, and your employers have access to. And then we'll finish up with Michelle, and then we'll finish up with Q&A. So, Sean?
Can you see that okay? Perfect. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate that. So I'll talk a little bit about some of the resources that we have. This is sort of our entrepreneurial solar system, and the inside of the solar system, our programs are within the Center for Business and Innovation, but they are programs or organizations within themselves. And then the outer part of the solar system are programs that we actually have in terms of training and support for entrepreneurs. So within the center, we have the Washington Procurement Technical Assistance Center. It's a statewide program, really a nationwide program. There's 15 counselors throughout Washington, and these counselors specifically help organizations to navigate the contractual process with federal, state, and city governments. And so they help them bid on government contracts and win government contracts. And so it's a very good growth strategy for a lot of organizations to take on work from the federal and state and city levels. Michelle will talk about the Lacey Makerspace here towards the end of the presentation. We have an SBA Women's Business Center within our center. So it's a women's business center sponsored by the Small Business Administration. And their work is primarily around helping women entrepreneurs to start businesses and grow businesses through coaching resources, through training resources, through events, networking, things like that. Down there in Tenino, we have an agricultural park that's about to start going up. And so that's going to be exciting. It's going to help connect the growers and grains and products that can be moved into places like the Craft Brewing and Distilling Center and actually used to brew beer and things like that. We also have a small business development center within our Center for Business and Innovation, and this is the primary counseling arm of the Small Business Administration. So they provide no-cost counseling to business in any stages of growth. And the counselors are typically, our counselor are typically previous small business owners that have experience on the ground that can really walk people through the steps and processes of applying for SBA loans and marketing and all that good stuff. So those are the organizations within the organization. Moving on to some of the training we offer and in terms of pathways, and I'll just go into the pathway portion now. So for our startups, people that are just getting into starting a business or new entrepreneurs, we like to have them start with our Intro to Business program. And that's either a monthly webinar or it's an online program that's available in 4 different languages: Spanish, Hindi, Korean, and Vietnamese. It's a no-cost program that allows people to start to get their bearings when it comes to starting a business and gives them next steps. One of those next steps could be our Next Step Business Enterprise Startup Training. And part of the funding that Tumwater put into the Thurston Strong Initiative is paying for this training for Tumwater residents. And the good news is we have some really good candidates that look like they're going to be starting some great businesses in Tumwater, including one of our Target Zone grant winners last year. She is going to be starting a coffee truck. Her coffee truck will be called Bloom and Brew. So it'll be a combination of coffee, and then she'll be selling fresh flowers. Another gentleman.
Sean?
Yep.
Yes, so how many did you get? How many small businesses did you get who are interested in starting?
So for registered, we got 6. Yeah.
Oh, outstanding.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
2 of those, and then we have 2 other folks that are starting consulting businesses, not quite as as exciting as a coffee truck. And then we have a gentleman who's a veteran who's interested in starting a craft brewing sort of billiards combination, so a place to play pool and have craft brew. So that fits in well with the craft brewing district. So anyway, this business enterprise startup training provides folks with access to online courses and access to one-on-one help, and then it pairs it with webinars in this case. And this training is really intended to minimize risk in business starts by helping people write a business plan, getting their accounting systems started, and helping them with their branding and marketing, and then also helping them structure and license their business. Another pathway for startups is our Small Business Development Center counselor. And so if people prefer to work one-on-one with a counselor, that's a great pathway for either through the SBDC. They can also work with the Women's Center in terms of counseling or training. If they have a product in their mind that they want to bring to a prototype phase, the Makerspace is a great place to do that. Then we also have a a women's online incubator called Quick Startup, and that's part of the funding from you folks that is going into this Quick Startup program. It's scholarships that provide women pathways to sell their products or services very quickly through either a store in the W Marketplace, which is an online marketplace up in Seattle, and or a Facebook market store. Also, they can get help with setting up their own website. So that's part of that. So it's called Quick Startup because the idea is to get them up and running and making profit quite quickly. Additionally, for startups, we have our business resource hotline open Monday through Friday, 9:30 to 3:30. And you can talk to a real life person and ask questions. We also have our own webinar series under the Women's Center called Let's Talk Business. And on the Women's Business Center website, you'll find a whole backlog of these Let's Talk Business episodes, a library, if you will have, of episodes on anything from digital marketing to running a nonprofit to, you know, getting a loan for a business. All that kind of stuff is all archived in video. Next phase in our ecosystem is for growing businesses, and that really starts with our Scale Up training series. It is a Department of Commerce program. They've adopted it off of us. We continue to administer it. We incubated it, and it's the premier growth training series in the state of Washington. It is a statewide program. It is free and available to any businesses that are interested in growing their business. The best fit for the Scale Up training is businesses that have been in business for 2 years and are in that 6-figure revenue, and they're really ready to get into that 7-figure revenue. And so that's a good basis for that training. We do have an investment network, our own version of the Thurston County Shark Tank, if you will. It's not the best fit for most businesses, but if you see a business or run into a business that has that next, you know what I mean, big tech idea, or that next big, you know what I mean, idea that can really grow out, these folks will listen to pitches. And much like the Shark Tank, they'll ask difficult questions and they may or may not invest in the business. We have had investments in several businesses, including local businesses. And so that's, you know, it is a pathway, not a pathway that's common for a lot of the businesses we work with, but it is a pathway. Growing businesses can continue to work with the Small Business Development Center counselor if they want to work one-on-one and continue to grow their business. We also have 2 programs for growing businesses within the center. One's a CB&I consulting, and this pairs local contractors with local businesses to get things done, like setting up accounting systems, or more likely cleaning up accounting systems, and building out, you know, much better websites for folks. So it's a good sort of program for growing businesses that need that extra bump to get to the next level. Part of the Tumwater funding for Thurston Strong is providing 2 of these projects for Tumwater businesses that will use Tumwater consultants to complete those projects. Business Tune-Up is a new program, and it's a workshop program, and this is sort of the next step after Business Enterprise Startup Training. And so folks will actually have one starting tomorrow for the city of Lacey, and folks will come into our conference room, and they get access to an online course, but then they'll come into the conference room and we'll sit down with them and we'll actually help them set up their chart of accounts in QuickBooks, learn how to use the cash management tool in QuickBooks, learn how to run financial statements. And so it's definitely a good step in the right direction to get their accounting houses in order. And you know, it's that first year in business is probably where people are best fit for Business Tune-Up. And then again, the Washington Procurement Technical Assistance Center is there to help folks contract with state, city, and federal governments. There's a lot of money out there in those types of contracts, and PTAC has helped in the last couple of years, helped businesses contract for over $300 million, I believe is the number. So it's no small amount of money there. Let me see here. So again, this is one of the programs, we talked about that already, that Tumwater is supporting, and we'll continue to run cohorts with that and keep you updated on the progress. One of the things with the ecosystem that we really want to, you know what I mean, continue to promote and continue to nurture is the idea of not letting them go, not letting a business go out of the system. Once they're in, we like to keep them in. We want to keep them connected. We want to keep them, you know what I mean, supported with any type of resource that we possibly can have for them. And if we don't have a resource, then we have a large network of partner organizations throughout the state that can help them with that next step. And so we want to make sure that we're holding their hand the entire way. If you want to learn more about our resources, our air traffic control website is businessresources.thurstonedc.com. And so folks come into here and they can select what stage in business they are, and then they can see all of the applicable resources that are good for them in that stage of business. We have a full calendar on the business resource website too, so you can see all of the things happening across the state and important trainings. And there's a lot of different opportunities for training. So a great place to just keep up with what's happening from an entrepreneurial standpoint. Okay, we'll leave some time for questions at the end here. I will go ahead and turn it over to Michelle Pope. She is the director of the Lacey Makerspace, and she's going to tell you more specifically about this resource.
Great, wonderful. Everyone can hear me, right? We're good? Good. Thank you for having me. It's really nice to be here, and especially as I myself am a Tumwater resident. I am proud to be. I've lived here now for just over, 12 years, going on 12 years. I live between the Heritage Distillery, in the old brewery and the community college, kind of in the older neighborhood. So happy to be here. I'm going to talk rather quickly through all my slides here, but just to share with you, so Lacey Makerspace, I've been the director since June of 2021. We opened a couple years prior to that, actually just before the pandemic, one of those businesses. But here we are, still surviving and thriving. And thanks to mainly those founding partners so we are on St. Martin's campus. We're open, of course, to the students, staff, and faculty of the campus. And we've had we are still under the nonprofit umbrella of the EDC. It's more specifically the CB&I. I get a tremendous amount of support and guidance from Sean and all the folks at the EDC. It's a great collaborative environment to be part of. And then, of course, City of Lacey sees us as helping be part of this innovative and creative economy throughout the greater region, and just bringing businesses and entrepreneurship, not just to Lacey, but all of the region, which I'll touch on a little bit more later on. Next, yes. So generally, what is a makerspace? For those who may not know, it's an innovator's workshop, and it's a place where people come to, they have access, we provide access to and instruction on a wealth of equipment and resources. We have design computers with software loaded onto them. We have already a very good variety of pretty amazing woodworking, welding equipment, 3D printing equipment. And it's a space where it's a really collaborative spirit. The staff really love to be there. The members love to be there. We actually just had a member meetup about a month ago now, and people want to help each other out and mentor and volunteer, and I really love being part of that environment. But we have, so what happens is we have this sort of pathway where people may come, it's already happening, this incubator that I envision the makerspace growing as we get on our expansion, but that people come in there to learn skills, and they leave knowing those skills to either grow their business they're already doing better, or start a new one, or gain those skills to get a better opportunity someplace else. Next. So one business I really wanted to speak to in particular, unfortunately, we were really hoping, Scott Royer is actually a very good friend of mine. I used to work for him a long time ago. He was really looking forward to being here tonight, but he has had a family emergency, so he was unable to make it. But I wanted to make sure to speak to him, and for him, I'll do my best. Scott Royer, as I mentioned, he runs Windfall Lumber. He started out as a small kiosk inside of a salvage place we used to run in downtown Olympia with salvaged wood, and now he's running a very major operation. He's someone I really respect that's managed to get through not only the pandemic, but a lot of rises and falls of our economy over the last 20 plus years. But so he started with these architectural products, just doing wood products, but speaking to entrepreneurship and growing ideas and growing your business idea, he's evolved to this new Cambio wall system. And he's designing this business right now as sort of a side shoot of Windfall, and actually hoping it's going to really take off. And he's signed up 2 of his staff at the moment, just 2 of his staff, but he's planning on having more join us. And so they are working on with my team, with my staff, and they're prototyping some of their new products. So you can see in the bottom pictures there, they have this new, it's a innovative interchangeable wall system that's really great for offices, homes, hotels, those sorts of, things where you kind of want something you can change out sometimes rather easily, the acoustic tiles, etc., but with a decorative bent. So he's been working with my staff to create new cutting knives for the routers that they use to cut out some of those decorative features that you see. And actually we helped him recently. They had a circuitry breakdown on their microwave that they used to dry their wood. And so they called on my staff to help do some new circuitry. So we were able to help him in a real pinch and not have to wait for parts to come from someplace else. So again, that real collaborative spirit. And he's actually working on some products that we'll actually be using in the makerspace to help us we're gonna have some new workbenches and things with some of his products. So it's an exciting collaborative opportunity to feature. So I can't say enough good things about Scott. We have other Tumwater businesses. So we have about 170 members right now, active members, and I'll talk about what it takes to be a member in a moment. And about 10% of those are actually Tumwater residents. We have people coming from all over. Again, we're not just the Lacey Makerspace. I think that's really important message to deliver to everybody. We have people coming as far as Aberdeen, Tacoma, Spanaway, Yelm, Rochester, and even Aberdeen, and all over the greater South Puget Sound area. So real proud of that. And Scott, we do have a couple other Tumwater businesses that are working with us. So next. So just to kind of show, this slide shows kind of what we do at the Makerspace. At the Makerspaces, again, we offer these classes. This was a class that we offered a little while ago, a live edge end table. So actually the instructor who's sitting down in the middle there was actually a member and and she volunteered to teach these classes because she was so excited about what we have going on there. She's a really unique entrepreneurial person to speak to as well. It doesn't do as well on Zoom, but I am wearing her earrings and her jewelry. I met her the summer that I had started. She came and was using the Makerspace every day to design this line of jewelry. And embedded in the earrings is an NFC chip that opens up a website, which again is hard to show on Zoom, but she was there almost every day using a laser cutter, designing this jewelry, assembling this jewelry line. And she launched her jewelry at a series of music festivals over that same summer. And she made over $25,000 her first summer just in selling her jewelry. So that's business that was out of the Makerspace and out of this area. Her family still lives in Tenino, and we hope to have her teaching more classes again. So we offer a variety of classes, everything from basics classes, which just teach you literally kind of the introduction up to basics, and more involved project classes. So quickly, we've got a couple of really big developments we're really proud of announcing. Of course, right soon after I started was our first big infusion of cash through the EDA. We got the CARES Act grant, a little over $1 million for equipment and instruction. And we're about halfway through both the grant and spending down that equipment. We actually just submitted another reimbursement today. So really excited for some of this equipment that we have and are getting. You can see at the bottom there, direct-to-garment printers already in use. We have a virtual welding simulator. So we now offer 4 levels of welding instruction, and I'll talk about that in a minute as well. Really excited to have this opportunity to advance the level of offerings that we have for our community, to be able to focus on a more advanced level of instruction and mentorship and prototyping. It's a big service that we offer there as well. Next. The other big exciting news is that also just at the end of this last year, 2022, with thanks to Senators Patty Murray and Congresswoman Strickland and Maria Cantwell, we got $1 million in federal funding to grow the space, because of course we got $1.2 million for equipment, sure isn't going to fit in our space anymore. So we are expanding into the full Zaverl Hall on St. Martin's campus. So the space that you see there, that's the yellow space, is all that we've been working in since we opened. And we're going to be expanding to almost 10,000 square feet. So that purple space is going to be just industrial metals. So Again, we're going to expanding our welding services, have more professional grade welding equipment. We have the green space is the digital lab where we're going to have the Epilogue, the water jet, the laser cutters, multiple kinds of 3D printing, resin printing, nylon 12. Again, all these things that people use in advanced manufacturing and robotics and things like that. A classroom with a textiles lab, and then actual office spaces for our growing staff. Next slide. In this slide, so one of the things we're heading to in both this expansion, both of this infusion of money, is to grow a workforce training opportunity. Really proud to announce that we just had a really great meeting with AJAC, which is a advanced manufacturing apprenticeship program. They've been mainly based in Seattle and Spokane. They are growing into this region. They've actually just hired a couple of folks to be South Sound representatives. And they're really excited to work with us and to hopefully by fall even, we're going to start with a small cohort opportunity to have a training opportunity in the makerspace where people from all over this region can sign up and take classes. And we're probably going to be focusing on welding because that's the equipment we have the most of at this time. Again, we have 4 levels of welding classes that we can teach. And if you go to the next slide, just to show you, we have the ability to, right now we have this virtual welding. So you can literally start putting on the virtual welding goggles. And then, so you get to practice on that. It's saving from it's not quite as scary that way, saving on consumables. Then we'll take you into the welding shop and have you try the same thing. And then we have a project-based class that's taught by a local professional welder, as well as now an intermediate level, which is in response to some of our members already saying they want to learn more skills. The next slide. So what we have available to the community right now, and again, what we're expanding on, thanks to all this funding and support that we have in our community, is that we offer, again, these basics and advanced classes in each one of the specialty areas. So if you want to come and just learn to weld, we'll teach you how to do that, or woodworking or 3D printing. And then we also offer mentoring services, where if you're somebody who's like, I think I know how to do this, but I need a little bit, a little support, we're going to help you get started on your project, as well as full prototyping and fabrication. We are working with someone right now who's working on a medical device who is going to revolutionize women's healthcare as we know. She's got a patent already for it. We've been working with her. She'll work with us to tweak the design. The advantage of having the equipment we have is it's lower barrier cost for her to come and make tweaks on it. She'll go back to her team and they'll practice things and come back to us to make those changes. And it's a real hands-on experience for that person. Then she'll hopefully be taking that to be manufactured here in the area as well. And just kind of mentioning what our staff are all very skilled at helping connect you both internally with the skills we have, but also externally to those resources back to the EDC and to the area, other manufacturers and such in the community. Next slide. I just wanted to share kind of quickly just a few pictures of some fun projects that people have made around there. The lower left, of course, is one of our welding projects that's taught in the welding class. The middle project, someone made that was actually an engagement ring that a military member made for their partner. We have the ability for people to do t-shirts. We actually just got the directed garment printer, which is really great. That's already seen a lot of use. And then we've made the Courage Awards, of course, for the Hootenanny for the EDC. And I wanted to share too another Tumwater business there in the upper right corner. That is Kasha Benavente, who owns Capital Perks. She's somebody who at first was hiring us to make her mugs for her as a little gift idea for the holidays. But then she wanted to learn how to do that skill herself. So now she doesn't have to rely on us or someone else. She can come in anytime as a member and design her own mugs, and anytime she wants to, and any other product that she'd like to grow on. And so, so wrapping up, 2 more slides. I want to make sure we have time for a few questions. Just regarding membership, again, I mentioned we have about 170 members right now. We're kind of growing as we know. Once we hopefully will be starting construction in May, so really looking forward to getting that done. It should take about 5 months when we have and then we'll have the whole 10,000 square feet of space. But a general membership is anyone walking in off the street can sign up for around $50 a month, and then we do have student and military memberships. Anyone 12 and up can join, and anyone from any skill level. I cannot emphasize that enough. Like I find it a great sense of pride to have somebody who comes in without a lot of skills and leaves feeling very confident. And then just the last slide is our hours and location. Just as a reminder, we are on St. Martin's campus and in Lacey, but we're open to the community at large. And at the moment, we're, because we're about to start construction, we're keeping our hours a little bit on the shorter side. We're only open Thursday afternoons and Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But it's our intention, again, once our expansion is done, that we'll be open at least 6 days a week and offering all kinds of classes in all the different areas. So I think I did it. Are there any questions?
Councilmember Daha.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, Michelle, I had a question, just a follow-up.
Yeah.
I love what you presented, and it just made me think, I serve on the board of LOT, right? And LOT is working with City Olympia and the port to do a trade training program. And so I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to have a discussion down the road when that develops more of
Absolutely.
that overlap, collaboration of connections of people in our community. Because I know Tumwater, I definitely want Tumwater to be a part of that, but I think there's a lot of opportunity with what you all are doing there as well.
Absolutely. We're open. I mean, sky's the limit right now, which is really exciting. I think with us starting construction, now is a really great time to be having those conversations about what we can start once we're done. We did host a construction cohort at the Makerspace right before I had started. I understand it was quite successful. I believe there were 10 attendees and almost every one of them got placed. And so that's exactly where we're heading, is that these sorts of collaborations and community connections. Yes, I'd love to talk.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Michelle and Michael, just while we're talking about the makerspace, was also hoping to use this opportunity to preview sort of an exciting regional effort on the way, if that's all right. And that being where the funding for the makerspace came from and how it was accessed and how we typically can access that funding. And so, Michael, can you say a little bit about an economic development district and that effort that's growing here?
Yeah, thank you. One of the things that our community has been hampered with since forever is that we are not a part of an economic development district. That is a federal designation under the Economic Development Administration. Typically, most counties in Washington State are a part of a federal recognized economic development district, and we don't have direct access or readily access to a lot of the funding that comes to it. It goes for infrastructure, workforce, and economic development projects, and those are direct grants. So one of the things that we started in earnest about 2 years ago was creating a path to get Thurston County into an economic development district. You can't just start your own economic development district, and you have to be invited to be part of a district, and it has to be an adjacent county. It's a federal designation. There is several districts that reside around us. There's the Lewis County and the Cowlitz County district, and then there's the somewhat defunct three counties to the west of us, Grays Harbor, Pacific Mason. That is somewhat defunct. And then the other district is the one that's to the north of us, Pierce County, King County, Snohomish, and Kitsap. We have written and were awarded a grant by the EDA to do a planning study on creating our district, more specifically around with the partners of Mason, Grays Harbor, and Pacific, and reestablishing that. Once we get that established, and we think that will be our paperwork, our community economic development strategy, which is a large document, will be done by the end of this summer. And we will submit that with an application to create a district. At that point in time, if we're lucky and successful, and I think that we will be, we'll unlock some of those doors that had been locked to us. One of the things that one of the reasons why is projects just like this is that this is an economic development project that supports families and supports individuals and workforce development. And so that's where Austin is alluding to. We will be coming back to this council with Austin as we get closer to submittal of that final document on the SEDS piece, because we want to make sure that you have an opportunity to see it and participate and input in it. We have plenty of time to do that, but that's one of those things that we've realized early on. It's been a strategy of the EDC for quite some time to get that done, and my work plan is now such where I can devote more time to that.
Thank you, Michael. And I just want to say, every other state and region I've worked in has an economic development district. And so I was just surprised when I got here and we didn't have that tool, because it can be really powerful. And when I think of Tumwater, right, I think of the washed out property and I think of the brewery and redevelopment efforts, right? It's really best suited for transformational regional projects and opens up sums of money that just don't exist in other economic development administration grants. So I think the makerspace was just a really great example of what a one-time exception did for the region
Yeah.
to access those funds and how powerful it will be when we're able to regularly access those funds. And these are really big efforts. And so I really appreciate Michael and his team's just staff and leadership time to put all that together.
Thank you, Russ. One of the, if I just provide one final editorial about the makerspace, when we kind of endeavored 10 years ago to think about economic differently, we started thinking in terms of what is missing in terms of structure. Certainly the structure of the entrepreneurial network, it's somewhat ethereal. You can string, make a net out of it. But did we have the ability and the products to create an innovation network? And we identified the makerspace at that time as critical that was not existing in the community. And St. Martin's had the facility, and it really is one of the reasons why it was there. They said, we'd love to have one as part of our curriculum. Want to make sure it's available to the entire community. And so that's why one of the reasons why it started. There's some other reasons, but really was the notion of how do you create an innovative thinker? And I would encourage you to direct us and guide us and lead us in the thinking that we've had already, but also in terms of how does it relate to your craft brewing, craft distilling district? There is a direct connection there. And the work that's happening at that craft brewing distilling is absolutely a part and parcel of a larger strategy that we need to recognize. And wanted to just kind of draw that string for you, that between your district, the makerspace, and really the Armory project at the City of Olympia, you have a emerging troika of projects in this community that will be pretty significant. And then you throw in the agriculture park down at Tenino as part of that as well. So pretty cool stuff going on in Thurston County right now.
Councilmember Jefferson, did you have a question?
Yes. I am liking everything I'm hearing. Just wonderful update. And I wanted to share a good news story. I had met a veteran and he was trying to build a bench. And he usually went on post to build his bench. And the Arts and Crafts Center closed on base. So he was like, Angela, I don't know what to do. I want to build this bench. And this gentleman lives in Ocean Shores. He has a beach house. So I remember going to that's the Marcus space. And I said, well, let's see if they can help you. So I looked up the website and I sent it to him. And he went to visit and he was just like, wow, they have everything I need. Thank you so much. You are great and wonderful. I was just like, nope, that center is great and wonderful. So he was one happy veteran and it's just an exceptional space. And we are lucky to have it. Lucky to have your leadership. And thank you so much for that.
Yeah,
Great work, team.
Thank you. I know Michelle would love to have provide a personal tour of the makerspace. Anytime you'd like it, and Michelle, I'm speaking for you, but I know you're giving me those nods. But anytime you'd like a tour of that space, give Sean a call or Michelle or myself a call, and we'll open that thing up for you and make sure you have it whenever's convenient for you. Because it is cool.
Thank you. Yes, I did mean to see, please, anybody who wants to, please reach out to me, Michelle at lazymakerspace.org. You can, I'm sure you have my contact info. And thank you for that story, Angela. I did mean to share too, one of the other breakdown that I'm really excited about in our membership base is that we are almost 50% of that membership base identifies as either student or military. And that's another thing I'm really proud of and honored to share that's a bunch of people that I think are really looking for these opportunities for growth and skills training and community. So proud to be part of that. Thank you.
Councilmember Kathy, did you have a question?
I just have a quick question. I was asked when Tumwater was going to get one of these marketplace things because people identify it with Lacey. And I was wondering how it got named and that it's Lacey Marketplace and not something broader than one city. my first question. And my other is, Michael, I was just wondering in a sentence or two, what would you say, because I can remember this about, the district and trying to put all that together for economic development. What is the main reason why we're having a little bit of a struggle getting designated, or whatever you want to call it? So those are my two questions about, people see Lacey, they're from Tumwater, they just asked the question.
Yeah, great question about the naming. Michelle, you might have a different answer than mine. But really was when we decided to open that thing, Joan, the Economic Development Council, or the Center for Business Innovation, was one of the three partners that would meet, and then we put in a pretty significant tranche of resources, cash as well as in-kind services. St. Martin's provided the building, and Lacey provided the operational capital to get us through the first year. There really was the notion there that we just had to get open. They provided $185,000 the first year to get that open. And so the real name, the official name actually technically is the Roy Hendricks Platform of Innovation at the Lacey Makerspace. Roy is the former president, who just retired president of St. Martin's University, but we've had conversations about the name Lacey Makerspace. So, but good question. We want to make sure that it is open. We had to name it something, and so that's where we ended. About the district, Michelle, did I get that right before I go off to the district?
Yes, yeah, if I can add more, but I want to make sure the other question gets answered first. I have maybe a little nuance, but I appreciate that. I mean, it was before my time, so.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle, about the district. So when I was employed elsewhere 20 years ago, I used the Economic Development District in that county all the time. In fact, there were some stories in the most recent newspapers about a town that was tragically impacted by a landslide. And one of the reasons why they were so quick to get back up on their feet was the planning we did under the Economic Development District for federal relief dollars. When we came here, we realized, hey, let's start that planning process. And there are two counties in Washington State that did not have a district. One was Thurston County, and the other one was Walla Walla. And I called the folks at Walla Walla and I said, well, what's the deal here? How come you guys don't have a district? Because I'm thinking about, well, why did we get left at the station? I said, well, we didn't need one when they were being formed in the late 60s, early 70s, because we had the federal penitentiary and we thought that was our bread and butter. And we just said, we don't need a district. And that was the quote from the economic developers there. And so when I started scooting around here in town, approached the port, and I said, well, I don't know. We never really thought about it. We have the state government, and then I talked to some of the local officials in the county, and now guys, well, we had the state government, and it just wasn't seen as a need, council member, as a district. As time went by, it's interesting. If you're interested, read the original language on the economic, on the legislation. It talks about building sustainable communities, environmentally sustainable communities. This is like 1968, using words that we're using now as economic sustainability, equitable. I mean, that's in the original language. And we thought, man, this is the cat's pajamas. This is where we got to go. And then we realized that we couldn't just create a district. You have to be invited to be in a district, and you can't have another district cause to fall apart and become a district. So I couldn't take over Lewis County's district. I couldn't invade, Weather County and bring it in here. So we had to be invited. Lo and behold, the district out in the Grace Harbor area became defunct. They actually approached us at that time and said, will you take on the fiduciary of managing our bank accounts? Because we don't want anything to do. So technically we've been managing about $10,000 in an account that I can't touch, but I just make sure it's there. My board knows it's there. So now it's time. And we have the three other counties agreeing that we want to do the district. A little bit more information than you asked, but it's a good question.
I remember some of that I was on the Economic Development Board when we hired you. And I remember.
We've been talking about it for a while.
Yeah, we've been talking about it a long time, and you've always been enthusiastic about it. Disappointed at sometimes, and hopeful at others. I hope this is a hopeful time.
Yeah, I tried to weasel our way in, and at the end of the Economic Development District, I think in the early mid 2000s out of Grace Harbor, and I think I was rebuffed. So
Well, thank
May
you
I-
for
May I
that.
add one, oh, I'm sorry, may I add just one thing kind of about the boundary, the Lacey Makerspace, and is that okay? Just one moment?
Yeah, go
I know
ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. I just want to add something that I didn't really emphasize enough about. I myself have a strong maker background, and I did live in Olympia for a long time. I actually ran the art studios at Evergreen for 11 years. And so the way that I like to explain it to people nowadays, yes, Lacey is in our name. Of course, we are in Lacey. But as myself, as I mentioned, someone who lives in Tumwater, I'm actually serve on the board for the Olympia Art Space Alliance. I'm a huge advocate for artists in the greater area. We ourselves, as that board, have had to evolve what it means to be Olympia Art Space Alliance. We now accept applications for our space grants from Shelton and beyond, even because anyone who does business in Olympia is what's important to us or in this area. And then so I'm a big supporter of Olympia, of course, in the art scene. And of course, I work in Lacey. So, and I think I represent a lot of people in this area anymore but these kind of boundaries don't mean that much to us anymore as residents. And I understand, of course, I understand the reasonings for different chambers and committees and councils, but and even more so, I think when you extract that even to a tribal level, of course, boundaries are it means different things to different people. And I just say that we're welcoming to everybody. Again, anyone who wants to come to the makerspace, we're gonna teach you the skills you want to learn. So that's important.
Yeah, I'm sure you are. And I wasn't asking that as a negative. I was just passing on a question, and I didn't know the question. I mean, I didn't know the answer about how it got named and so
Yeah.
forth. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
great work. Great work. Thanks for your presentation. Made me want to work in wood.
Come on by.
Oh, closest I got was refinishing furniture, and not building it, just.
Councilmember Swarthout?
Oh, thank you, Mary. Thank you for this presentation. It was really eye-opening, all the different things that you've been working on. I guess, you've been such a big part of, the whole with COVID and everything else like that. I guess just how do you think we're doing now, Michael? How's it going? Are we starting to crawl out again? What do you think about as far as like the general economic health of our area?
yeah. Wow, that's the big question, isn't it? So I don't have any data to back it up. And I'm going to ask Sean to talk a little bit about the tenor of his clients, because he really is dealing with a lot of folks that come in and need a business tune-up. They need to look at my books and stuff like that. So I'm going to ask him to think about that in just a second. But I think that we're doing pretty good, to tell you the truth. When we came out with our economic vitality index at the end of the calendar year, the index showed actually showed an all-time high. Just actually a pigtail down a little bit, but we had shown an all-time high. Our unemployment rate has gone back down to where before pre-pandemic. Economic development activities, retail sales has been up throughout the region. And so there's a lot of indicators for an upward trend. But there is some choppy water out there, and it depends upon how you look at it. A lot of times we look at wages and family wages, and are they impactful wages? Some of the health statistics I'm seeing come out of the Thurston County Health District, very frightening. It's just very bothersome to me. Personally, economic development is about people, right? It's about making sure that we're doing things to support individuals. And some of those numbers come out of the health district. Mortality rates for infants is up. Some of those numbers, and so that tells me that we have to start looking at other things to do to raise the capacity of individuals. Overall, the economy is doing well, was your question. I think this next year is going to be a little bit choppy based upon things that we don't have any control over. Sean, you might want to comment about some of your folks that you see in your business counseling side of the house.
So I think that the idea of starting a business has become a lot more attractive to folks coming out of the pandemic. A lot of people seem to feel that, there's an opportunity there that wasn't there prior to. And so we see a lot, we're seeing a lot of people, interested in starting a business. And I think when you get that groundswell of people and you get a network and create this sort of, you know what I mean, entrepreneurial environment, I think it builds on itself. And then when you have hubs like the Makerspace, like the Craft Brewing and Distilling Center, like the Armory, and it creates, you know what I mean, the vibe and the air of entrepreneurial spirit, you know, and that's what you really need to get going. And I think I think we're seeing the starting of that. And I think that these different hubs are going to be the places where you see a lot of that grow. And once you get that going, I think then it just encourages everyone that's ever thought about starting a business to start to explore that. And that's the magic dust for the economy, really, is, you know, you get more small businesses going, you know what I mean, everything, it impacts everything positively.
Sean, I want to take what you just said and pivot it a little bit to a question that was sent to me recently and that we get a lot. And I think it comes from this misconception that Tumwater has a lot of chains or national brands and is therefore not friendly to small business or is not business friendly. And I think what you just said, you know, disproves that. I also think for anyone asking that question, if you spend enough time in Tumwater, and you could do it briefly, there's a lot of really vibrant small businesses in our community of all types, whether it's professional services or food and beverage or restaurants. And I also would say the fact that our council continually invests in the EDC and its services really disproves the notion that we're not business friendly, right? So I get a little fired up when folks ask that question because I hear it quite a bit. And I think that's the furthest from the truth. And so again, that goes back to all the services at the EDC and all those programs and our continued investment in that. And so I just wanted to take it as an opportunity to address the question, but also just highlight how important it is and how grateful we are to the team.
Any other questions?
I I have a comment. So
Yes.
Michael, okay, the last time I believe about 6 months ago, maybe 9 months ago, you and I sat down and I asked the question about how business is doing generally in Thurston County since COVID, and you did show me a data, and that question went into how are we going to make sure that we in Tumwater not only are not sourcing for service industries businesses, but businesses that can provide retirement benefit. In other words, we want businesses that are sustainable, that can that I or your family can go to and work and retire from. I forgot what your comments were. Can you please refresh my memory how we ended that discussion, if you remember?
I do. It was a good conversation. Had to do with the changes in the local economy as it relates as people entered in and out of the pandemic. I think the data that you're thinking about, it shows in terms of the retail sales for Thurston County and the region were actually through the pandemic are very robust, pretty high. But on the downside of, if you start the big pandemic and then you go to the current date, the businesses open actually were down 28%. So retail sales about 38% during that time up, but businesses down 20, closed for 20. So the work that we were talking about is the work that Sean and Michelle does to make sure that those businesses don't necessarily just go away. Those individuals or people, they start thinking about different ways to start their business. And so we got to scale them up in a different way. So we think about how business operates and delivers their product in a different function and a format in a post-pandemic environment. Sean's had to adjust his schedules and his curriculum around that. But I think that's what we were talking about, is that we were also talking about, and then the other piece we're talking about is the cost of housing and then the relative cost of housing to employment. There's a crisis that we've kind of been dancing around. We all have been kind of talk about it in meetings, but the notion of first-time home buyers being able to afford a house or a home, it ain't gonna happen. This just doesn't happen. It's just, unless you've got a bunch of money squirreled away as an individual. And so we have to start thinking in terms of what is the employment opportunity versus the wages that those individuals are so that we can start chipping away at that, the differences, the delta between what's affordable and what's parity, and then what those wages afford. And that scares me a little bit, because then we start talking about a commuter community where jobs go, jobs go to Cowlitz County during the day, and they come home to sleep in Tumwater. I don't think that's a healthy environment that you want to have. I do think that's a conversation we need to have. And, we've been kind of looking at it, kind of scratching our head as how does that trend line change? I haven't seen any change in the trend lines since we've been tracking in the last year. And that's something that goes back to Councilmember Swarthout's question about how's the economy doing. I think that if I was kind of on my button there, I would have answered it that way in thinking of terms. But that was a really good point to bring up, because the difference between wages and affordable housing is pretty significant. I think Tumwater's done some good things, just editorial comment for me. Austin's comment about is Tumwater friendly for employment? Yes, there's some vibrancy going on there. When you think about walk through Mottman, you walk through some of the other areas you have, I just think it's really, it's unsung. But we need to start thinking of ensuring those have every opportunity to grow and expand those markets. One of the reasons why we wanted to have Scott here tonight was a Tumwater business. It's changing his business environment, changing his business model to impact a different market and keep it at pace and growing. Because if you're not changing, you're really kind of going backwards. The economy's changed so much. Think about the world that we all grew up in. I'm not putting, my kids aren't putting cards in their bicycle spokes to make, they're on the internet. They just don't do that anymore. It's different. So good question. Thank you. I don't think I answered it succinctly, but it was a good question. Something to think about. I don't have a full answer.
Thank you, Michael.
Any other questions?
If no other questions, Mayor, just next steps for the group. We'll work with the EDC on a new 2-year service provider agreement. It's been budgeted for at $25,000 a year. So that will come to council for approval in the near future.
Great, thank you.
Mayor, could I just ask, is it possible in the coming months here, whatever, for us to have a discussion, maybe as part of a work session, to talk about, how we as people who live in Tumwater and some who've been here most of their lives and whatever, have seen changes and seen what works and what doesn't. And like one thing I think is really important is just to realize that we're in a political 2 years here, and people are weary and frustrated and whatever, and it really impacts economic development. And how can Tumwater, create what she needs to do and what we're capable of, also without a central downtown. It's been a while since we've had conversations that are just pinpoint where we are and I think, and where we want to go and where we've been and what's worked and what hasn't. And I know that Austin is new, and I just think some conversation about our future success is important somewhere here along the line.
Yeah, and I think Austin has definitely got a good handle on that. Councilmember Doha?
Thank you, Mayor. John, I'm just thinking, there's so many things, but in our long range plan, in the comprehensive plan updates, is the economic development plan one of those updates this cycle? I'm wondering if that's the case, then could that be the avenue to have that discussion? Austin, I can't remember if
I don't remember.
Well, we have like 13, 14 elements, and I don't know if the economic one is up for review.
It is, I think the last update when I checked was right before COVID, and the world is obviously very different since then. And I think when this was last discussed, part of it was we are unfortunately going to have a new city administrator soon. Fortunately and unfortunately, happy for you, John, but also
not happy for you, John, but keep going, Austin.
And also while it feels like COVID is over, there's still some rippling effects. And we're seeing that when we talk about the rockiness. And so wanting to introduce that analysis and planning when the timing is truly right, and there's a balance there, but just acknowledging that we don't want to go through the time and resources to create a plan if it's going to be in a very different environment soon here. So I think it's something that's been on the table. I think we're just sort of waiting for the right moment. John, what would you add to that topic there?
Yeah, I don't know that I would add anything to that. I mean, I think the comprehensive plan update probably creates a framework to talk about that. And if nothing else, it is simply going through that document and that planning process to say, you know, there are certain things that we laid out, like the concept of brewing and distilling, and how do we advance that as an economic development strategy. Probably hasn't changed a whole lot. And in fact, a lot of progress has been made, you know, even through the pandemic, we've moved forward quite a bit. But there are probably other things that, I don't know that anything drops off the list, but probably just needs to be updated based on what the world looks like today. I don't know that that's a Herculean undertaking. And, you know, maybe what we could do is, you know, over the next 6 months, because this is a, you know, multi-year planning process, maybe Austin and Brad sit down and, you know, read the plan, and maybe we can get a little bit of time from our friends, our partners at the EDC, to just read through the plan and say, how does this compare to where we are today? You know, obviously statistics and population, all that kind of stuff have changed, but, you know, we don't have as many people working in office buildings, and the state will tell you we're not ever going to have as many people working in office buildings, you know? So that alone may be one of the most significant changes in that plan. And so maybe there's some smaller dials that we could tweak without creating a huge project.
Yeah, I didn't mean it as a huge one. I just meant it as a, you know, kind of current ongoing conversation, like you're suggesting. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? All right, well, thank you so much. This has been very informative. Yes, John.
If I could just finish our moment here and just say, I mean, it has been a pleasure for me to work with Michael Cade and all of your cast over 13 plus years. And you have been incredibly responsive and incredibly smart and incredibly hardworking and really committed to Tumwater's success. And I realize you have a lot of people who you have to help everyone be successful, but I really do feel like you've helped Tumwater be successful. And you have had really great people like Michelle and Sean, who you've been able to bring expertise to the table, and just honored to be able to have that resource in that community. It is really a big deal. You know, I'll tell you, I mean, I came from a much larger county where you would think there are far more resources to do economic development. We did not have access to any of this. Economic development where I came from was done at 100 plus employers, and that's when it started. And so small business just didn't have access to this. So thank you, Michael. I know it's a lot of you. It's your board. It's the leadership that has, you know, preceded all of this. But thank you.
Thank you, John. And I absolutely have found a lock-in partner with you over the years. And I was very distraught when I heard that you were going to retire, but happy for you. But thank you very much for those comments.
Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. It's very useful and helpful information. So John, I'll kick it off to you now, the Memorandum of Understanding with the Squaxin Island Tribe.
Certainly, thank you. Yeah, this item, I mean, as everyone knows, Tumwater sits on the ancestral lands of the Squaxin Island Tribe. And we have had a history over the past dozen or so years of having some, I would say, high-level interaction with the tribal leadership. We've had multiple and occasional, I guess, interactions between the tribal council and our city council. I think those have been good, sort of alternating back and forth as to whether we go visit them and they host us or they come here. And I think that's developed into a good relationship. I think, I mean, I even remember like I think it was a tour of the golf course we went on. That was pretty exciting. And so, you know, really just prior to COVID, I think there was some conversation about how could we make that relationship more formal, but yet maintain a level of informality to it. And so we got a little distracted by the pandemic, and then coming out of the pandemic, sort of renewed our work at a staff level to come up with a framework for a broader government to government relationship. And so the memorandum of understanding that you have creates that structure, creates a group that would meet on a regular basis to address all sorts of issues that could come up, from economic development to habitat to art and culture. Just whenever there are issues and opportunities for us to consider. We already do a lot of things. We do a lot of things on the development side, public service side. Dan Smith's staff and water resources probably have the most interaction. We had a lot of interaction when it came to planning the future of Capitol Lake. So this isn't new, but it's creating a structure for a more formal relationship. In terms of the memorandum, the tribal council approved this last week. So if you are comfortable with it this evening, it would move forward to next week's council meeting, and we would then schedule some sort of signing opportunity with the mayor and the tribal chair. The second document you have is a letter of understanding that relates specifically to a piece of tribal trust land that the tribe acquired adjacent to the port property at the airport. That's how all that fits together. They are doing a marijuana dispensary, and they are interested in public services from us, police, fire, emergency medical. And so what this letter does is create sort of an initial 3-year framework, a contribution from the tribe towards those services. They are not what we know from other marijuana dispensaries. They are not big public service generators. They're pretty small for the most part in terms of number of calls. So we'll do sort of a 3-year, let's see how it goes. There are some issues though, between particularly law enforcement being called onto tribal trust land about who has jurisdiction and when and how and who can be arrested and who can't and where they go and things like that. A lot of little nuances that the two chiefs will need to work on over the next, and I think we laid it out in there, over the next 120 days. And that really becomes the next project for that intergovernmental group, is to work on putting together that relationship and defining what those processes look like. So again, you have two documents in front of you. One is the overarching memorandum and defining the relationship, and then you have a smaller one that deals with just the specifics of that facility on Old Highway 99. And the thought is really that could be a model that if the tribe purchases and develops and puts into trust land additional pieces of property, that could serve as a model to provide service and work with the tribe at those locations. So having said all that, I would entertain any questions or concerns.
Councilmember Jefferson?
Yes, I looked, I saw a number 2,500 a year. How did we get to that number for the cost?
You know, first I would say the tribe is very sensitive to not paying taxes and not paying things that look like the equivalent of taxes for obvious reasons related to history and governance and independence. But do understand that they will create some additional demand. And so we did sort of a rough estimate as to number of calls and roughly how much they cost. You know, a fire call probably runs $1,200 to $1,500 a call. These things, again, don't have very many calls in the course of a year. So frankly, we sort of settled in on 2,500 as a place where everyone felt comfortable, and we'll come back and revisit that in 3 years.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Althauser.
Thanks. There's a property in trust that's developed into a dispensary. Does that still have to abide by state 502 laws, or because we have a government-to-government relationship with the tribe, are they able to establish their own sets of rules for things like purchase amounts? They probably wouldn't be subject to the state excise tax on product that is sold there. Like there's also, you know, product amounts, labeling requirements, all sorts of things like that. How does that actually work if it's on a tribal land?
That is a great question, and I don't know the answer. You know, like with liquor, it has to do with a federal relationship with the tribes, but I don't know in terms of the state regulations.
Yeah, because this is still illegal under federal law, which is the confusing part. Okay.
Yeah. We'll find out.
I do know that they already own a cannabis store already, so I'm assuming that they know all of the requirements. So
I've been there for research purposes, but sorry, on mute.
all right, any other questions? So is everyone comfortable with this just coming to the city council, and then we can do the sign? All right, I see nodding that it meets with everyone's approval, so we will move that
Be
forward.
thinking about who would like to serve on that committee, because we'll be back soon asking for representatives.
I have a question. Where will this be? Is this agreement and what we're going to do? Is this important and positive and everything for the community to know about? I mean, should there be should it be on consideration? And then John, have you give a quick what this means to establish this kind of a relationship?
I would suggest it be on consideration.
I mean, I think it's a great thing. I'm not talking about the marijuana part of it, and we have to send Michael on some more reconnaissance, it sounds like, before we can do that. But for the other piece of it, I'm okay.
Right. Any other questions? So it'll come on the consideration at their next council meeting next week.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right. With that, we will move to Mayor City Administrator report. John, do you have anything?
Just one item real quick. A few of you have heard this, but it's time we can tell everyone that the State Department of Commerce awarded what's called Rapid Capital Housing Acquisition Funds to the Housing Authority in the amount of $6.9 million for the Tumwater Suites project. That will create 24 units of low-income senior housing. A portion of that will be dedicated to seniors coming out of homelessness, very specifically. And they actually received more money than they asked for. So they will be able to do some additional improvements to the building. I think we talked at one point about the lifts on the stairs and things like that, that they will actually be able to do. So our investment of $225,000 is paying off with an additional $6.9 million. So good investment, city council and mayor.
Right.
That is all I have.
And then I just might mention, speaking of great money going into the community, Councilmember Jefferson and Councilmember Dahlhoff is also there. The groundbreaking for the new Habitat for Humanity townhomes. This is just going to be great for the city of Tumwater, and they're going to be actually beautiful places to live. So very exciting, and some more of our great resources put to good use. So another one that'll help people maintain stability in their housing. So that's all I have. So with that, give everybody a break, and everybody will be able to hopefully get dinner at a reasonable hour. So we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.